Wish you a very happy Diwali. Diwali is a big festival in the Indian subcontinent, and growing up, it meant a lot to me. It is a festival of lights, and people call it by different names. People call it Diwali, Deepavali, uh, and different parts of India have different names for Diwali. Uh, it is especially important because during Diwali, the entire Indian subcontinent lights these oil lamps and also electric lamps. And they celebrate light. Really, if you think about return of light, that's what the Indian subcontinent really celebrates. And there is a lot of metaphysical and spiritual significance to Diwali. But first of all, socially and culturally, let's talk about Diwali in a social and cultural uh, in social and cultural terms. In India, growing up, we used to burst these firecrackers, and in colloquial language, we would call it that um, Hazar Ki Lar, which is like thousand uh, firecrackers, small crackers put together, and I and my brother used to burst them. It's a time where everybody makes different kinds of sweets. My mom makes amazing Ravan laddu and besan laddu, which I miss. And we make these sweets, and the community comes together. We share these sweets with our neighbors. If we have not seen the neighbors for the entire year on Diwali, we'll see our neighbors. We'll see our friends. People wear new and bright clothes, really to celebrate light, to celebrate joy. And what is light within us? It's the love, right? So we not only celebrate the love within us, but we celebrate the love for others um, during Diwali. Uh, it's also a great way for communities to come together and bond. That's when your festivals are a time, and India has a lot of festivals, and I love them all. But festivals are a time where everybody comes together. Um, they really forget their differences and just partake in the joy and the fun and the music and the dance and the sharing of food, which is so important because as we are getting more technologically advanced, we are forgetting to connect to each other at a deeper level, at a heart to heart level, right? And these festivals served as a means of bringing the entire community together and just not thinking about our agendas anymore, not being individualistic anymore, just being a group and sharing joy. And what is joy if it cannot be really shared with others, right? And Diwali is one such time, especially in the Indian subcontinent, and really Indians all over the world, uh, and people in the yoga community now are celebrating it as a means to share light and to share joy. I specifically wanted to make this video to talk about the metaphysics of Diwali. So I'm going to share my screen and show you uh, the planets and the relationship of the sun and the moon, and why do we celebrate Diwali around this time of the year? Why do we celebrate light around this time of the year? It's important to really ponder about it. So let me share my screen. I hope you all can see my screen. One thing I want to point out really is Diwali is a 5 day festival in most parts of India. In southern India, Diwali is mainly celebrated on the new moon or the Amavas, which is on Saturday, and it's actually the third day of Diwali for the rest of the country. The first day of Diwali starts on the waning 13th day of the moon. So when the moon is waning and it's becoming darker and darker, The two phases of moon right before it's completely dark is when Diwali is, people start celebrating Diwali. So it's called Triyodashi, 303, you know, the sounds are similar. Triyodashi, Krishna Triyodashi, which is the dark phase of the moon, is the first day of Diwali. It's called Dhanteras. And on first day of Diwali, the myth is in the churning of the Milky Ocean, Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, abundance, wealth, she emerges from the Milky Ocean. Dhan, the word dhan itself means wealth, dhanteras. So Lakshmi is born. And then there are different stories, and the folklore is different throughout the country. But there's a common theme where Lakshmi is born on Dhanteras, on Krishna Trayodashi, the 13th phase, and on the new moon day, she chooses Vishnu, uh, who is attributed to maintaining balance in the entire universe. She chooses Vishnu as her husband. And the tale goes, when she comes out of the churning of the Milky Ocean, um, everybody wants her, right? They're churning the Milky Ocean because they want to be immortal. But after the second thing after you want to be immortal, most people think is they want material wealth. And she does bestow material wealth, but she also bestows uh, spiritual wealth, which not a lot of people go for. And there's a legend which talks about, there's a myth that talks about how Lakshmi chooses Vishnu, and she says she will marry a man who has no desire for her, and no desire for wealth. It's like completely detached. And therefore, she chooses Vishnu as her consort and marries uh, Vishnu. It's also said that Vishnu didn't have. So Lakshmi is the daughter of Varuna, the ocean. He's the god of the ocean, and they were churning the Milky Ocean, and she was born out of it. Um, and in order to marry Lakshmi, Vishnu didn't have enough wealth or money. So he takes a loan from Kubera, the god of wealth, to or the keeper of wealth, so to say, to marry Lakshmi. So that's a small story related to Dhanteras. She's born on the 13th Tithi, and she weds uh, Vishnu on Diwali. And Diwali, the main day of Diwali, is when people worship Lakshmi. Excuse me. Um, so the the way these tithis happen, when I talk about waxing and waning phase of the moon, what I'm really talking about is the relationship between the sun and the moon, right? When the moon is directly opposite the sun in the sky, it reflects the entire light of the sun back to earth, and that's when we have the full moon. When the moon is very close to the sun, that means from where we are on earth, the moon is between the earth and the sun, it's very close to the sun. uh, it it cannot reflect the light of the sun, and that's when it's the darkest. So we are really looking at the relationship of between the sun and the moon, and we really have to see what the sun and the moon represent, right? The sun represents the paramatman, or the true soul nature, and the moon represents the mind, the Jivataman, which is the individualized experience of that soul. The soul is eternal, right? And because we are working these karmas out, we have an individualized experience of that soul or of that karma, which really is represented by the way our mind, by the way the mind is inclined towards certain things. So the paramatman, or the soul, is represented by the sun. You can think about the sun as the pure energy, right? If the sun was not in the sky, the solar system would not have existed, right? So the sun is that eternal, for consciousness on earth, the sun is the eternal, represents the eternal soul, whereas the moon represents the mind and the karmas that the individual is experiencing, especially in the mind. Maybe they may not act out the karma. So we are looking at this relationship, and uh, during the month of Kartik, so Diwali happens in the month of Kartik. It's a Hindu lunar month. Indians follow lunar months, and what the month of Kartik really means, the way they come up with these months, is wherever the full moon is happening, wherever they see the full moon in the sky, uh, in that constellation is what they use to name the month. So once the moon passes the sun, becomes really dark, it travels all the way and gets directly opposite the sun, it will be in the constellation of Kritika, and that's why this whole month is named as Kartik. Just a side story. So we are really looking at this relationship between the sun and the moon, and on Krishna Triyodashi, the moon is starting to become dark, right? Um, and I told you the story about Dhanteras or Triyodashi, when people buy gold, especially Indians love to buy gold. Uh, I like gold ornaments too. I'm wearing gold earrings too for Dhanteras. The next day, and I'm going to move this forward. Uh, the moon has already entered Libra, and it's Krishna Chaturdashi. So the moon is really dark and it's approaching the sun. You can look at the moon, it's at 11 degrees, and the sun is at 27 degrees. So it's really approaching the sun really close, and it's becoming darker and darker. And Krishna Chaturdashi, or it's also called Narka Chaturdashi, is the day, as the legend goes, Lord Krishna killed Narakasur, the Asura called Naraka. He killed Narakasur, and this uh, legend is said to take place somewhere in eastern India, in the state of Assam. And so it's a big day of East Indians where they celebrate the death of Narakasur. And by killing Narakasur, Krishna frees some 16,000 women or girls, young girls, that Narakasur was holding captive. Very relevant in today's day and age, right? Um, and so Naraka Chaturdashi is celebrated on the day before Diwali. And so there's something really important to notice here. The sun is in the sign of Libra, and Libra is where the sun is the weakest. And I don't mean the soul is the weakest, but our access to the soul might be the weakest. Uh, the sun is exalted in the sign of Aries, where Aries is a fire sign, and sun is a fiery star, right? So it feels at home. You can access the power of your soul, that fire within, really well. Um, but in Libra is an air sign. The energy or the power of the sun, think about the air or the wind and the storm. The power of the sun feels very dispersed. Fire feels very dispersed, right? Imagine if you have a spark and the wind comes and blows really hard, that spark will either vanish up completely or may lead into wildfires, none of which is helpful, right? You need the fire to be contained where you can really access it. So you can imagine why the sun energy feels debilitated or is debilitated in the sign of Libra, where its power is really dispersed, and it feels harder to access that power. It's not that it's not there. It just is a little harder to access it. And also the moon is, so that if I move this forward one more day, this is Amavasya, or the new moon. The moon has joined the sun and it's very close to its debilitation degree. The moon is debilitated in the constellation of Vishaka, but in between 0 to 3 degrees of Scorpio. So as soon as the moon, each sign is about 30 degrees. So you can see how close the moon is to its debilitation degrees. And so both sun and the moon are at its weakest. The mind is wavering. When it's weak, it constantly wavers. It cannot stay still, right? If you look at the dark moon, it's just, you cannot see anything. You can see the stars, but it really, in the world, on the land, harder to see. If you're in the ocean, harder to see where in the night if there's no moon. And also if you think about your mind, when the mind is really dark and it's not able to access that power of the sun too, it is very wavering. It becomes one thing and the other. It is easily changeable and easily mutable. So, and you know, you are the sign of Libra is the power of the wind, right? So yes, you can do pranayam and you can do kriyas, and they are always the best to stabilize the mind. But for a layperson like you and me, we who have 8 to 5 jobs and maybe work more than 8 to 5, maybe 80 hours a week, have some people have kids, some people, so many responsibilities. And when people cannot access, lay people cannot access their own inner power, and their mind is constantly wavering, that's when we remind ourselves of the light by lighting a lamp. So on the darkest day of the year, the brightest day of the year is Akshaya Tritiya, right? Both the sun and the moon are exalted. The sun is exalted in the sign of Aries, moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus, directly opposite. But the darkest day of the year is when both the sun is debilitated and the moon is debilitated. And it becomes harder to just sit and meditate if you're not practicing it. So, the ancients were so wise, right? They they told us to look at the lamp, light these lamps to remind us of the light. And when you focus on a lamp, and it's a good meditation to do on the day of Diwali if you want to, just focus on the lamp and see how your mind stabilizes. Also, really share the joy and connect with people instead of being alone and lonely and depressed. So, instead of meditating or instead of going into solitude, uh, Diwali really encourages us to connect with people. Libra is a very social sign, to really connect with people and find our power there, find our joy there, find our love there, find our light there, find others reflect our light back, because we cannot, it's harder to access our own light. I hope that makes sense, right? Um, so it's the relationship between the sun and the moon. The sun, if you think about it, also represents the masculine, and the moon represents the feminine. So the masculine and the feminine also feel pretty kind of weak within us. They are not forces outside of us, they are forces or attributes within us. So this masculine and feminine energies may also feel weak. The legend goes, or the myth goes, in Treta Yuga, this was in Treta Yuga. Um, so according to some calculations, we are in Kali Yuga right now. According to some calculations, we are in Dwapar Yuga. Sri Yukteswar talk says that we are in Dwapar Yuga, or the age of electricity. Treta Yuga was a lighter time, a time of Lord Rama. And Rama represents the sun, Sita represents the moon, and the whole mythological tale of Ramayana talks about Sita getting abducted by Ravana. He was the 10-headed king, not literally 10 heads, but he was a genius. And his genius was such that you had to put 10 geniuses together, 10 intellectual geniuses together to get somebody like Ravana. And so Ravana abducts Sita, and so the moon becomes the weakest. And then Ram has to go and fight this war, and he does so with the Vanar Sena, or the monkey, the soldiers, the monkey soldiers. Vanar literally means monkey. He doesn't have an army to fight Ravana, who's a big king of Lanka, all powerful, super intelligent. He has all the modern technology and all the modern equipment with him, and the warcraft and everything. And Rama was living in exile then, so he had nothing with him, right? So he gathers a bunch of monkeys headed by Hanuman. So this is all, if you think about the monkey mind constantly wavering, Hanuman, the son of the wind god, Vayu, all talks about Libra themes, which is which is the air sign here. He gathers all of them together. So the sun itself is not all that powerful, but with the power of the wind, with the power of all the monkeys put together, steady and focused, he beats Ravan and uh, takes Sita back home. And on the day of Diwali, they ascend the throne. And if you think about Lanka or Sri Lanka, it's further south. It's south than the southernmost tip of India, and Ram's kingdom, Ayodhya, was in northern India. Uh, so he was Ayodhya is almost northeast, and it was so dark that all the people, in order to welcome Ram back home, had lit lamps throughout the path so they could see where they are going. And then they reach home, his kingdom back uh, on Diwali, on the new moon, and they ascend the throne. Ram and Sita ascend the throne. And this is also a metaphor for the sun, Ram, our soul, the moon, Sita, our mind, or Jivataman. And we need the power, the focused power of community to lead us back home, our home within us. And the community or the people light these lamps so we are reminded of the light to lead us back home, right? Isn't that wonderful? So remember the power of community or Sangha. The day after Diwali, which is the first day after the new moon, it's called Shukla Pratipada. And now the moon is waxing, is celebrated as Annakuta or Padwa in some regions of India. Um, Also, it's called the day of Lord Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma is a divine architect. So you build stuff. You start putting plans to build stuff together. Annakuta literally means food or grain, and heaps of food or grain or mountains of food. So really looking at harvest, you're really looking at abundance, really looking at any structures that you can put in place to live an abundant life, even if it is just an intention, is done on this day. The fifth day of Diwali is I did something new. Okay. I'm just going to do hours. Shukla Dvitiya is when Dvitiya is the second day after the new moon, is when people celebrate Bhai Dooj. Bhai literally means brother, the bond between the brother and sister. So India is very unique that way. It emphasizes a lot the relationship between the brother and the sister. So the brother goes to the sister and they share this bond. Also, they say on Bhai Dooj, after Krishna killed Narkasur, he was welcomed back by his sister Subhadra. In some other parts of India, there are some other tales celebrating the brother-sister relationship. But it also shows the importance of siblings sticking together, of siblings being each other's support, of siblings really protecting each other. And you know, India also has a tale of Mahabharat where siblings fight each other, and India also celebrates festivals like Raksha Bandhan or Bhai Dooj, where this special sweet bond between siblings is celebrated, and we are reminded that our reflections are seen in our siblings. We have come from the same parents, and we have the same lineage, so we are working similar generational karmas, and we can help each other on that. I hope you guys have found this video helpful. Light a lot of lamps for Diwali, make a lot of sweets, or even if you buy sweets, remember to share it. It's about sharing. It's sharing the joy, it's sharing the light, it's sharing the love, being together in a community. We are stronger together, we are not stronger apart. The individual can only go as far as the community goes with it. So we have to remember that. We also have to remember a lot of tales talk about the victory of good over evil, but sometimes the good and the evil is not that clear, especially with Ram and Ravan. If you really think about them, it's not really the legend and the times when they were alive in Treta Yuga. Ram is clearly the hero, but if you look at Ram and Ravan through contemporary lens, who's the hero and who's the villain becomes very clouded, because through contemporary lens, Ravan may not be that, doesn't come off as that bad either. So there is always a gray zone, and we have to remember that nothing is binary, nothing is black or white, nothing is completely good or completely bad. There are shades of gray, and we need to work with each other. Diwali reminds us that, remembering that there is light in each one of us. When Ram killed Ravan, he honored Ravan's greatness, the light in him, and was very pained to kill Ravan, because he Ram understood what a great uh, intellect Ravan was. So when we deal with each other and we deal with everyday conflicts, we have to remind each other that there is light, that divine light that resides within all of us, even though we cannot see it at times. That's why we light that lamp to remind us. Have a great Diwali. Bye.